in the talk, lute seems to be a taboo word, but I will start the talk by talking about the lute. This Nataraja that you are seeing is a very special Nataraja, and I'll tell you why he is special for some time. I normally start my talks the opposite way, with a dedication at the start compared to others who do it at the end. So I dedicate my talk to unknown artists and sculptors who created these divine works, to the kings and chieftains who supported them, and to the people like you who still continue to enjoy them. And since we are in Tamil Nadu, I'm going to say the same thing in Tamil as well. நிகரில்லா கலைக்கு வாழ்வை அர்ப்பணித்து அழிவில்லா சிற்பங்களை படைத்த படைப்பாளிகளுக்கும் அற்புத கலையை ஆதரித்து வளர்த்த அரசர்களுக்கும் இன்றும் நம் குலதர்மங்களை மதித்து ரசனையுடன் பார்க்கும் ரசிகனுக்கும் உங்களுக்கும் சமர்ப்பணம். Incidentally, anybody can help me identify who this deity is? யாரு? That is the problem. This is not Shiva. This is Adhikara Nandi. Adhikara Nandi. Normally, the other attribute would have had axe and an antelope, but because he is in Anjali Mudra, he cannot be Shiva. With the third eye, he is depicted, so he is Adhikara Nandi. So nowadays, the problem with Chola bronzes is, the moment somebody talks to you about Chola bronzes, we all think it's only Nataraja. In fact, I did a talk a couple of days ago on bronzes, not showing even a single Nataraja, and the talk went for 1.5 hours. So there are a lot more bronze icons apart from the Nataraja. But why is it that the Nataraja is important? Imagine that smile has been there for 1,000 years. And you can even see the smirk. That's why it has its alluring appeal. Not only just a smile. A lot of people think of this as just a work of art. That they lasted 1,000 years makes me rethink. The guy who sculpted these wasn't doing it for money. The king who did it didn't do it for money. If you go down to Mahabalipuram, I was fortunate enough to go there and have a private conversation at 4 a.m. in the morning after jumping the fence because the guard was asleep. King Rajasimha Pallava, he sculpted there saying, "My name shall be known because I built this edifice for you till the sun and the moon continue to rise and shine." And there the Shiva temple is there, witnessing another sunrise after 1,300 years. These were built to last. And they were not built just for the sake of building. Just see this coyness in that bronze. You can actually see a little amount of shyness. And again, I repeat, it's a 1,000-year-old bronze. So, if anybody talks about Indian art, and I thank the Apparao galleries for holding this in the art gallery, Chola art is considered the biggest, the high point, the high watermark of Indian art. But the objective of this talk is not to see them as pieces of art, because the patrons who commissioned them did not intend them to be pieces of works of art. Sadly, in the last 100 years, the artistic value has grown where the devotional value has eroded. She is also special. Please put them in your memory. I'll tell you why she is special as well. There's always been a debate of exhibiting art, and a lot of people ask me, you bring all this stuff back. They go back to a warehouse or a locker. I just want to show you this particular dancing Shiva, the earliest representation of the dancing Shiva, not as Nataraja. It's in a cave temple built by Mayan government around between 600 and 630. And this is how books of art would depict the earliest dancing form. But when we went there on a trip, imagine it's a sculpted cave, excavated cave, and this is on a pillar, so it cannot be moved. Thankfully, it cannot come out of its abode, but this was how we saw him. The feel, the emotions it evokes is entirely different. Now, I'm just going to show you a few slides. This is in the Rydberg Museum in Zurich. Beautiful beautifully exhibited, flashlights, focus lights, temperature controlled, but were they cast to be shown like that, or this is how they are treated? And this is how they are celebrated back in their homes. This actually adds to my problem. I'll explain why. This is the Vishnu in the British Museum in London. This is in a temple. I'm not going to name the temples for obvious reasons. We would love to have our documentation like this, but sadly we get our art exhibited like this in temple posters. The art of decoration is it's not being documented. This is another early Chola temple. Why I wanted to show this stone image? We were photographing this early in the morning, me and a couple of my friends who share this fanatic to their bordering on eccentric passion of documenting temples. And the priest rushed and said, wait. And he just took out a red cloth and just wrapped it around. And it was, he could actually feel it jump out of life the moment he did that. This incidentally is also a Nataraja. You can actually only see the face. This creates a lot of problems for us in terms of documenting. Why is proper documenting needed? Is because if you notice anything amiss in this group, it's a Rama Sita group. The Rama and Sita are one pair, but the Lakshmana is actually a later replacement. Stylistically, similarly, here the Rama is old, the Sita is a new replacement. Sadly, there are very few people who even stop to see these, let alone study and how to date them. Date meaning the scholarly dating. We've lost a lot of our bronzes, and each of them is individually beautiful. And these are exhibited in museums abroad. And sadly, I'm sure only a handful of Indians have ever seen these bronzes. What's happened? The sadder part is, when bronzes are cast as a family, they get sold as individuals. For example, this Nataraja now in the Met went out of India sometime in the 1950s. It was gifted, but his consort, for some reason the collector kept with him, and later, after about 30 years, auctioned her on Sotheby's. So you have the Nataraja without his consort in a museum, and his consort being auctioned. Of course, the same pair, you have Samandar also, who's with the Met. And what's interesting now is, with the growth of online auction houses, it creates a lot of problems because these bronzes have an identity on their own, and their identities are being erased. I take this example. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about the Kanji Kailasanath temple. It's a brilliant monument by Rajasingha Pallava, probably one of the earliest structural temples extant still. This Gauri was originally from there. For some reason, she went into the position of a dancer sometime in the 1930s, 1940s. And then recently, she came up for an auction. And I would like you to focus on the price, almost $1 million. But there is no mention of the provenance. So after a few years, nobody knows who she is. She's actually queen of Kailasanath. So this brings us to the big debate. The debate on auctioning our gods as piece of art. So you have this Somaskanda group going for almost 2 million. 1.2 million, Dinadara. This is a Pallava period Vishnu, known by its Prayoga Chakra. And more problematic is, we don't get to know who bought. So it just says private. So once they go into these private collections, at least in museums, you might get a chance to see them. Now Now it's gone worse. They're even selling them on eBay. Not only that, a lot of restaurants are cropping up who are actually tampering with the icons. You will see that shortly what they are doing. I just want to show you this. This is not something specific to India. This is actually from Nepal. Its current state. We are still searching for the head. So if you have time, go Google for the Huntington Archive. And this is, I don't know how many of you have gone to Cambodia. This is a small hill near it's called Kabalsvian, where the entire riverbed has been carved with 1,000 lingas. And on the side, we have this fantastic relief of Sayana Perumal dated to the 9th century. And you see what happens? Somebody has chiseled away the face of the Lakshmi. 1 week later,
when did this happen?
6 years ago. So for all those proponents of buying ancient works, I like them to see this act of vandalism, to adorn your drawing rooms. The other thing is when museums display exhibits. India is really bad. Our museums do great injustice, but whenever you see a bronze, I'd like you to go behind the bronze, because from here you just see an Alingana Murti, but you look at the tenderness of emotion of a hand going lovingly around the consort's waist. So I come back to this Samandar because to show you the greatness of the craftsman. Look at the curl of the hair, individual strands. The palm, the thumb, the nails. The delicateness of form has been brilliantly captured. Why? Because we call them Tirumeni, bodies of God. They were created not as pieces of art, but as living souls of the God. And that's a Nataraja that's been under worship for 1,000 years in the big temple, consecrated by the great king, Emperor Rajaraja Chola himself. And now I would like you to just focus on the sheen on the bronze, which is in continuous worship. It doesn't have the greenish patina that you see in museums. Which brings us to the main topic of this talk. That much was an introduction. Bodies of God, the pinnacle of artistic expression. Bronzes have adorned auction houses for a long time. I'm not going to list all, but I'm just going to throw a few to show you how much we have lost. That's almost a $3 million price tag. My friend, or most of them are Chola fanatics. He bought up the issue of the so-called Rajaraja bronze currently in a museum inside India. It's important for him to come back as well, but I wanted to show you another one. This bronze that you see now is also a Chola king, identified by the anklet here. That's called a Veera Karan. You will have it in all Chola bronzes of royal portraits. It designates him as a ruler, and sadly he was auctioned for just $58,000, named as Chandigeshwara. What hurts me more is our gods. There are paper and magazine ads advertising stolen loot. Why? There's a flip side as well. We don't care about our heritage, and this is the condition that we place our gods in. In termite mounds. So the flip side is, instead of being like this, he might be in an air-conditioned hall. And these are prime targets for the greedy. So we started something called an India Pride project. Those of you on social media and Twitter, you can follow us as India Pride project and as Poetry in Stone. What we are trying to do is to build awareness via social media and Twitter. Our idea, why we called it is India Pride project, is just pride. Because quite often when we are faced with a restitution request, it reflects very sadly on the lack of initiative from the people you know who. I will show you a few examples of that. But first I'd like to give you a class early on before you get too late and sleepy. I'd just like to show you what is the laws, applicable laws. I'm not going to run through it. Usually I don't have so many words on my slides. So I just want you to look at what does the law, the legal framework. UNESCO has come up with a convention in 1970. It prohibits the dealing in cultural property. Now, any country that is a signatory to this convention takes upon itself the responsibility to return looted stuff without compensation. That's the gist of it. So if two countries have signed this convention, another country can prove that this object left the home country illegally after the statute came into place. So after 1970, for example, if you have a documented proof that it was in your country and you can prove that this object is in another country, if that other country is also a signatory to this convention, you don't even have to go to court. Just send them a 30-day notice where they can contest the claim, then it becomes obligatory on them to return it. Not only that, it defines what is cultural property. I'd like you to go and take a look if you're interested. But it also gives a lot of stuff on what the home country should do. What it does is, the laws of a country have to be lined up. Any theft, publicity should be given to disappearance and loss. In the sense that, for example, Interpol has a stolen database network and it's a free registration. So if you have something lost, you can go and register it on Interpol site for free. Sadly, there are 6 items registered from India, and of which 4 is already documented. It also asks the host country to start a movement to educate the people on the greatness of their own culture. Meaning, you have to invest in the locals, trying to understand what their treasures are. Just to throw a spanner, this 1970 is not the holy grail or the start point. This is a convention, but India has its own patrimony laws in case of cultural property right from 1878. So if it's post 1970, it's easier. If it's after 1970, all you need to do is to go to court according to all these laws. We have 3 laws and you can sue on these. So most collectors think if the object has a 1973 provenance, then it's all hunky-dory. It's not so. Please. Good on. I used the word provenance. I'm just going to explain it for people who don't know provenance. Provenance is similar to your Thai patra. I know most of you are dealing in property, at least one property. So, provenance basically means historical data, patamal. So, what is considered good provenance in art collectors? The most important are these 2. I would like you to focus. If an artwork has been published in a magazine or somebody has written a note on that, that dealers tend to show. Basically, it means this object has been publicly talked about and nobody has raised a claim. So its provenance is sound. Similarly, any book of art, so it creates a lot of onus on connoisseurs and art experts and scholars, because we're going to later see